During my freshman year of college, I lived in a large dormitory filled with unruly people who would come home drunk and wreak havoc. It was not uncommon to see broken exit signs, courtesy of drunk a-holes slamming them down, bathroom trash cans deliberately knocked over, with trash spilling into the hallway, and stalls ripped from the wall. It was 3 AM on a Thursday, and I was home using the computer while my roommate, who lived in the same room as me, was sleeping at his girlfriend's place. Suddenly, a random, blatantly intoxicated student barged into the room. This caught me by surprise. I typically know what nights to expect the drunken dudebras to start pouring in, and this was not one of them. Nobody partied or went to bars on Wednesday night at this school. Once he gets in the room, he immediately whips his dick out and takes aim at the bed. And there I was, staring at this fool and his floppy cock, trying to talk him out of what he was about to do. Unfortunately, he was too drunk to comprehend anything I said and proceeded to color my roommate's bedsheets yellow. In the conclusion of this poor sap's stellar night, he then stumbled out of my room, stripped down to his underwear, and passed out in the lounge. None of the stores that sell alcohol near me really check IDs. All but the worst of fakes are accepted without a second glance. Knowing that he might have bought alcohol using a fake, I fished through his wallet to check, and, sure enough, he's got one. Before calling campus security, not the police, to pick him up, I took both his IDs and placed them on display in the transparent front compartment of his wallet. Of course, when they came and found him unconscious, they checked his wallet for his ID and noticed he had a fake too. As was my goal, this compounded his situation, because both urinating on someone else's property and fake IDs are taken very seriously by the school. I later found out from someone else that he was suspended for the rest of the semester and prohibited from returning until after the following one. Being drunk is not an excuse for actions that have a significantly negative effect on others. What he did caused a lot of trouble for my roommate, the cleaning staff, and myself with his utterly laughable lack of self-control. Revenge was not the motive of his actions, because my roommate told me he had never even met the guy before. It was completely random and without reason. Honestly, this is a type of sad, pathetic crap I never expected to see outside of movies. Some background. I work at a company that primarily supports hotel Wi-Fi, and taking calls from guests needing help connecting is part of that. Part of my job at the time of this happening was being an escalation point for unresolved guest problems. One time roughly 2 years ago, there was some huge hurricane going through Florida, so a lot of our hotels in Alabama and northern Florida were packed with people evacuating their homes. Most people staying at these hotels were bringing most of their possessions as well. Anyways, I got a message from the guest support team asking me to take a call from one of these guests from Florida, so I could help them connect the dozen or so devices they had to the Wi-Fi. For some reason they were refusing to connect, and tier 1 support couldn't resolve it. I start talking to the guy, and he is immediately hostile towards me, and gave the whole I know what I'm doing, im tech savvy shtick. I shrugged it off and, after about 30 minutes I was able to get every single one of his devices connected. After that he was still incredibly pissed off, and started ranting about how incompetent the employees he had been previously talking to were, and being upset at me that I took so long to get his crap connected too. I forget most of the profanity he was spewing at me, but I'll never forget him saying your techs are worthless. You should hang them from their effing intestines. At this point I should have just hung up on him, but I froze up a little and let him continue. He ended up insisting that I help him set up his Plex server, which is against the hotel's TOS, since he could potentially be using it to stream movies illegally. I finally got my manager involved, and we called the GM of the hotel and brought her up to speed while the guest was on hold. I got her conferenced into the call and immediately she began chewing him out and telling him he cannot talk to their support staff this way, and that we had other more considerate guests to be assisting. He tried defending himself, telling her how long we took, but she was not having it, and told him he had 2 hours to get all of his belongings and leave or she would call the police. I'm not sure why she let me stay on the call for this long, but this guy begged her to let him stay since he had just finished lugging everything he owned into his room and every other hotel around was booked. She didn't budge however, and after scolding the guy some more she told me I could disconnect. Never in my life had I seen justice delivered so swiftly. This is the story I always tell people when talking about crazy support calls. Please remember this the next time you consider blowing up at tech support staff. I used to work in an office. What kind of work isn't particularly important to the story, so just picture a basic office job. Every January, HR would send an email to all employees with the employee handbook. This included job descriptions, office policies, etc. Every year since the PDF handbook had been established, it would be named with the year following it to establish it was different than the original and all other years. Any changes would have updated next to the section in the table of contents, so you could see what had changed from the previous year and familiarize yourself with anything new. Now with that background, we will introduce Karen. Karen had been with the company a pretty long time, about 10 years I believe. She was fine at her job. Just fine. She would get things done, but not without making everyone else miserable in the process. She would ask questions that had already been answered, and basically just waste everyone's time for fun. She was just plain nasty to people, and tried as hard as she could to make everyone stay far away from her. The worst thing about her was she always seemed to be looking for a fight, or looking for a reason to complain. She had threatened lawsuits a few times over any small thing, but would always just get over it and drop it because she knew no laws had been broken and it would never go anywhere. She'd comment on how she should sue basically every business she ever went to because she could live off the settlement and retire early, over the smallest issues you can imagine. She did her job and we never had a valid reason to fire her, especially knowing how lawsuit happy she was, so she stayed. Karen's job description, as per the handbook, called for a bachelor's degree. Karen did not have a bachelor's degree, but had been hired prior to that being a requirement, so she was grandfathered in. One day, a position above hers became open. A guy who we will call Terry had recently completed his master's degree after taking night classes for a few years, and since an internal promotion is typically better than an outside hire, he was chosen for the promotion. Terry had been at the company about 4.5 years and was well liked and great at his job. The new job required a master's degree in its job description, and him being a recent grad, it was a perfect fit and everyone was happy for him. Everyone but Karen. Since she was constantly looking for something to sue about, she took it as a direct insult that she had not been considered for this promotion that she was not at all qualified for. She immediately cried discrimination and told our boss her lawyer would be in touch. We were all perplexed, since it was very clear that this position required a master's degree, and given that she didn't even have a bachelor's degree, there is no way she could have been hired for the role. What we soon realized was that Karen had saved the original company handbook named Company Handbook and had not bothered to open or save any new editions that were sent in the following 8 years. She just assumed no changes had been made and that it was just sent every year to ensure all employees had it. If she has bothered to open the file, she would have seen the sections that say updated in the table of contents. Since Karen cried lawsuit a lot, no one expected much of this, since it was ridiculous claim. But sure enough, Karen gives her resignation letter via email, and it is scathing about how she can't bear to work in such a discriminatory environment that would only promote men. When any higher-ups try to speak to her about this and clear up the confusion, she basically tells them to F off and to read the damn email. I don't owe any more of an explanation. She basically goes full Karen. Not long after, a letter comes in from her lawyer asking for a settlement to avoid a discrimination case. What Karen hadn't realized was that our boss' sister-in-law owned a law firm. She didn't really take on clients herself anymore and mostly just managed the other lawyers of her firm. She was basically semi-retired. What this meant was she had plenty of time to review any letters from Karen's lawyer and advise us. Since Karen didn't bother to read any of the updated handbooks, she was unaware that this position had required a master's degree for many years now, I believe about 6 years. She supplied her lawyer with the original company handbook from 9 years ago, and he used that as reference in his settlement demand. This was when we realized she hadn't read any new handbooks in years. Since Karen rubbed a lot of people the wrong way, boss's sister-in-law decided to personally take on the case. Every letter Karen's lawyer sent, she sent back 1-3 times in length. Some of it wouldn't even really say anything, just wordiness, but it would certainly take Karen's lawyer a while to read it, and he did not come cheap. After several of these letters, they realize no settlement is going to happen. They want to take it to court. It's a pretty cut and dry case. Boss's sister-in-law shows evidence that Karen has received all updates via email after the change was made and the handbook sent out. Bowers even sent an email to Karen specifically letting her know that she was grandfathered in and doesn't need to worry, to which Karen replied okay, thank you, confirming receipt of it. The best part was when bosses still said that they couldn't break company rules to give Karen a job she was totally unqualified for, while neglecting another employee who went above and beyond to get his master's degree to advance, as that would be unfair to all other employees. Karen now had a huge, seriously, huge bill from her lawyer for all of these letters and filing the case, etc. No job, no one she could list as a positive recommendation, and no degree. In the time she had been at the company, it had become industry standard to require a bachelor's degree, so she was effectively shut out of her career. It would also be hard to explain how you worked somewhere for a decade and don't have a letter of recommendation from anyone there, if she had only read her damn emails. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, a like and a comment would mean a lot in YouTube's world. Share with us if you would have done things differently, and don't forget to support the original authors with an upvote. Links are in the description. Peace out, and catch you tomorrow.